Brabo and the Giant by William Elliot Griffis. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by LisaRubio, San Rafael, California, 2015. Ages ago, when the giants were numerous on the earth, there lived a big fellow named Antigonus. That was not what his mother called him, but someone told him of a Greek general of that time, so he took this for his own. He was rough and cruel. His castle was right on the Scheldt River where the city of Antwerp now stands. Many ships sailed out of France and Holland down the stream. They were loaded with timber, flax, iron, cheese, fish, bread, linen, and other things made in the country. It was by this trade that many merchants grew rich and their children had plenty of toys to play with. The river was very grand, deep, and wide. The captains of the ships liked to sail on it because there was no danger from rocks and the country through which it flowed was so pretty. So every day one could see hundreds of white-sailed crafts moving towards the sea or coming in from the ocean. Boys and girls came down to stand in their wooden shoes on the banks to see the vessels moving to and fro. The incoming ships brought sugar, wine, oranges, lemons, olives, and other good things to eat, and wool to make warm clothes. Often craftsmen came from the wonderful countries in the south to tell of the rich cities there, and to help build new and fine houses and splendid churches and town halls. So all the Belgian people were happy. But one day this wicked giant came into the country to stop the ships and make them pay him money. He reared a strong castle on the river banks. It had 4 sides and high walls, and deep down in the earth were dark, damp dungeons. One had to light a candle to find his way to the horrid places. What was it all for, the people wondered, but they soon found out. The giant, with a big knotted club made out of an oak tree, strode through the town. He cried out to all the people to assemble in a great open square. "From this day forth," he roared, "no ship, whether up or down the river, shall pass by this place without my permission. Every captain must pay me toll in money or goods. Whoever refuses shall have both his hands cut off and thrown into the river. Hear ye all and obey. Anyone caught in helping a ship go by without paying toll, whether it be night or whether it be day, shall have his thumbs cut off and put in the dark dungeon for a month. Again I say, obey." With this the giant swung and twirled his club aloft and then brought it down on a poor countryman's cart, smashing it into flinders. This was done to show his strength. So every day when the ships hove in sight, they were hailed from the giant's castle and made to pay a heavy toll. Poor or rich, they had to hand over their money. If any captain refused, he was brought ashore and made to kneel before a block and place one hand upon the other. Then the giant swung his axe and cut off both hands and flung them into the river. If a ship master hesitated because he had no money, he was cast into the dungeon until his friends paid his ransom. Soon, on account of this, the city got a bad name. The captains from France kept in, and the shipmen from Spain kept out. The merchants found their trade dwindling, and they grew poorer every day. So some of them slipped out of the city and tried to get the ships to sail in the night and silently pass the giant's castle.
But the giant's watchers on the towers were as wide awake as owls and greedy as hawks.
They pounced on the ship captains, chopped off their hands, and tossed them into the river. The townspeople who were found on board were thrown into dungeons and had their thumbs cut off. So the prosperity of the city was destroyed, for the foreign merchants were afraid to send their ships into the giant's country. The reputation of the city grew worse. It was nicknamed by the Germans Handwerpen, or hand-throwing, while the Dutchmen called it Antwerp, which meant the same thing. The Duke of Brabant, or Lord of the Land, came to the big fellow's fortress and told him to stop. He even shook his fist under the giant's huge nose and threatened to attack his castle and burn it. But Antigonus only snapped his fingers and laughed at him. He made his castle still stronger and kept on hailing ships. throwing some of the crew into dungeons and cutting off the hands of the captains until the fish in the river grew fat. Now there was a brave young fellow named Brabo who lived in the province of Brabant. He was proud of his country and her flag of yellow, black, and red, and was loyal to his lord. He studied the castle well and saw a window where he could climb up into the giant's chamber. Going to the Duke, Brabo promised if his lord's soldiers would storm the gates of the giant's castle, he would seek out and fight the ruffian. While they battered down the gates, he would climb the walls. "He's nothing but a bullywhack, a bully and a boaster," said Brabo, "and we ought to call him that instead of Antagonus." The Duke agreed. On a dark night, 1,000 of his best men-at-arms were marched with their banners, but with no drums or trumpets or anything that could make noise and alarm the watchmen. Reaching a wood full of big trees near the castle, they waited till after midnight. All the dogs in the town and country for 5 miles around were seized and put into barns so as not to bark and wake the giant up. They were given plenty to eat, so they quickly fell asleep and were perfectly quiet. At the given signal, hundreds of men holding the ship's masts or tree trunks marched against the gates. They punched and pounded and at last smashed the iron-bound timbers and rushed in. After overcoming the garrison, they lighted candles, and unlocking the dungeons, they went down and set the poor, half-starved captives free. Some of them, pale, haggard, and thin as hop poles, could hardly stand. About the same time, the barn doors where the dogs had been kept were thrown open, and in a full cry, the regiment of the animals, from puppies to hounds, were at once out, barking, baying, yelping, as if they knew what was going on and wanted to see the fun. But where was the giant? None of the captains could find him. Not one of the prisoners or the garrison could tell where he had hid. But Brabo knew that the big fellow, Antigonus, was not at all brave, but really only a bully and a coward. So the lad was not afraid. Some of his comrades outside helped him set up a tall ladder against the wall. Then, while all the watchers and men-at-arms inside had gone away to defend the gates, Brabo climbed into the castle through a slit in the thick wall. This had been cut out like a window for the bow and arrow men, and was usually occupied by a sentinel. Sword in hand, Brabo made for the giant's own room. Glaring at the youth, the big fellow seized his club and brought it down with such force that it went through the wooden floor. But Brabo dodged the blow and, in a trice, made a sweep with his sword, cutting off the giant's head, and he threw it out the window. It had hardly touched the ground before the dogs arrived. One of the largest of these ran away with the trophy, and the big, hairy noddle of the bully was never found again. But the giant's huge hands, they were cut off by Brabo, who stood on the very top of the highest tower, while all below looked up and cheered. Brabo laid one big hand on top of the other, as the giant used to do when he cut off the hands of the captains. He took first the right hand, and then the left hand, and threw them, one at a time, into the river. A pretty sight now revealed the fact that the people knew what was going on, and were proud of Brabo's valor. In a moment every house in Antwerp showed lighted candles, and the city was illuminated. Issuing from the gates came a company of maidens. They were dressed in white, but their leader was robed in yellow, red, and black, the colors of the Brabant flag. They all sang in chorus the praises of Brabo, their hero. "Let us now drop the term of disgrace to the city, that of hand-throwing, and give it a new name," said one of the leading men of Antwerp. "No," said the chief ruler. "Let us rather keep the name, and more than ever invite all peaceful ships to come again. Antwerp at the wharf, as of old. Then let the arms of Antwerp be 2 red hands above a castle." "Agreed!" cried the citizens with a great shout. The Duke of Brabant approved and gave new privileges to the city on account of Brabo's bravery. But from high to low all rejoiced to honor their hero, who was richly rewarded. After this, thousands of ships from many countries loaded or unloaded their cargoes on the wharves or sailed peacefully by. Antwerp excelled all seaports and became very rich again. Her people loved their native city so dearly, and they coined the proverb, "All the world is a ring, and Antwerp is the pearl set on it." To this day, the great square rises the splendid bronze monument of Bravo the Brave. The headless and handless hulk of the giant Antigonus lies sprawling, while on his body rests Antwerp Castle. Standing over all at the top is Brabo high in the air. He holds one of the hands of Antigonus, which he is about to toss into the Scheldt River. No people honor valor more than the Belgians. Themselves are today, as of old, among the bravest. End of Brabo and the Giant by William Elliot Griffis.
The Magic Flower by Lindsay. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Magic Flower. Once upon a time there lived a wee woman whose bit of a garden was a delight to all eyes. Such flowers she had, and in the midst of them, green as an emerald and smooth as velvet, was a grass plot with never a weed upon it, and through the grass ran a garden walk as white as snow. Everyone who saw it declared there was no prettier garden in the king's country, and what they said was no more than what was true. Early and late the wee woman worked to keep her garden fair and lovely, but in spite of all her care, whenever the east wind blew, it brought with it a whirl of trash from her neighbour's dooryard and scattered it among her flowers. Alack and alas, what a dooryard was that! Except for the trash that was always upon it, it was as bare as the palm of your hand, and there was a heap of dirt and ashes as high as a hillock in front of the door. Everybody who passed it turned their eyes away from it, for there was no uglier spot in the king's country, and that is nothing but the truth of it. Whenever the wee woman looked at her windows or walked in her garden, she saw the dooryard, and many was the day when she said to herself, "I wish I were 1,000 miles away from it." And if she made up her mind, as she sometimes did, that she would trouble no more about it, the east wind was sure to come with a whirl of its trash. Oh, it seemed as if she were always cleaning because of that dooryard. And what to do about it she did not know. She puzzled and planned, she wished and she worked, but she had come to the end of her wits when, one day, her fairy godmother came to see her. "Never fret," said the godmother when she had heard the trouble. "In your own garden grows a magic flower that can set things right, and if you will only tend it and watch it and wait long enough, you will see what you shall see." And when she had pointed out the flower, she went on her way, leaving the wee woman much comforted. She tended the flower and watched it and waited to see what she should see, and while she was watching and waiting, the flower burst into bloom, the loveliest bloom. Every blossom was as rosy as the little clouds at sunrise, and the wee woman's garden was more beautiful than before because of them. "'Tis the prettiest garden in the king's country," said everyone who passed, and what they said was no more than what was true. But as for the neighbour's dooryard, it was as bare and ugly as ever. The heap of dirt and ashes grew larger every day, and whenever the wind blew from the east, it brought a whirl of its trash into the wee woman's garden, just as it had always done. The wee woman looked each morning to see if the magic of the flower had begun to work, but morning after morning nothing changed. "It is long waiting and weary watching for magic things to work," said she to herself. But because of what her fairy godmother had told her, she tended the flower from day to day and hoped in her heart that something might come of it yet. By and by the blossoms of the flower faded and fell, and after them came the seed. Hundreds and hundreds of feathery seed there were, and one day the wind from the west came by and blew them away in a whirl over the fence and into the neighbour's dooryard. No one saw them go, not even the wee woman knew what had become of them, and as for the dooryard, it was as ugly as ever, with its ash heap and its trash. Everybody who passed it turned their eyes away from it. The wee woman herself would look at it no longer. "I will look at the magic flowers instead," she said to herself, and so she did. Early and late she tended the plant and worked to make her garden fair and lovely, but she kept her eyes away from the dooryard, and if the wind from the east blew trash among her flowers, she raked it away and burnt it up and troubled no more about it. Summer slipped into autumn, and autumn to winter, and the flowers slept, But at the first peep of spring, the wee woman's garden budded and bloomed once more, and one day as she walked there with her back to the dooryard, she heard passers-by call out in delight, "Of all the gardens in the king's country, there are none so pretty as these two," and when she looked around in surprise to see what they meant, she saw that the neighbor's dooryard was full of flowers, hundreds and hundreds of lovely blossoms, every one as rosy as the little clouds at sunrise. They covered the heap of dirt and ashes. They clustered about the door-stone, they filled the corners, and in the midst of them was the neighbor, raking and cleaning as busily as if she were the wee woman herself. "'Tis fine weather for the flowers," she said, nodding and smiling at the wee woman. "The finest in the world," said the wee woman, and she nodded and smiled too, for she knew that the magic flower had done its work. End of The Magic Flower, read by James.